Steelers make a sneaky good signing as they just added another defensive playmaker to add more talent to their defense. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers reports and analysis regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. As the Steelers have added a ton of veterans this offseason, they add another one to their defense to add more talent to their roster. Before we get into the video, if you guys are not already currently subscribed, click that subscribe button down below. We are trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. But the Steelers have signed former Baltimore Ravens and Jets safety to their team. You know, this is a guy who knows AFC North football, and he knows what's up, knows what goes down in the AFC North. The guy I'm talking about is Chuck Clark. This is a guy that played a few years with the Ravens, had a pretty good amount of success with them, but, was traded to the New York Jets last year for, I believe, a 6th or 7th round pick. But, in the past, this guy was a big playmaker for the Ravens. I do remember a few years ago, him making some plays, unfortunately, even against us. But like I said, he knows AFC North football. He knows what it's all about. He knows what it's like to play against teams like the Steelers and the Browns and the Bengals 2 times a year. And, he knows what it's like to play in Baltimore. Although I don't like Baltimore, they got a good team. And, they are the little brothers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, they're always giving us competition. And, they are our primary rivals in the AFC North. But, like I said, Chuck Clark was a guy that was traded to the New York Jets a few years ago. Still has some talent left in him. I believe he's later in his 20s or early in his 30s. But, Clark will be viewed as the top option to work with Juan Thornhill, another veteran safety. We did sign early this offseason from the Cleveland Browns. So, we are picking up some more AFC North football players, some dudes that do know what it's like to play in the division, know what it's like, know what's at stake. So, but he's going to probably fluctuate with Thornhill at that free safety position. This is a pretty big hole on our roster after losing Minkah Fitzpatrick in that trade to acquire Jaylen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. So we will need Clark and Juan to step up, show what they got, show that they still got some gas left in the tank, and give us some winning football at that free safety position. But, after trading Minkah Fitzpatrick, we did need a free safety. I did think we were going to sign a guy like Justin Simmons, but unfortunately we did not. He's still a free agent. We'll wait and see where he goes. He might head back to Atlanta or maybe sign with a team like the Eagles, who still needs some safety help after obviously trading away C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But, as a corresponding move to free up some space, we have released defensive tackle Dominique Davis. I'm not really worried about releasing him because we do have a pretty good amount of depth at that defensive line position. We had definitely addressed that defensive line position this year in the draft, obviously picking Derek Harmon in the first round, picking Yaha Black later on out of Iowa, a big dude. Also picking up Jack Sawyer in the 3rd or 4th round, a guy who can, play that outside linebacker position, but also lined up at that defensive end position. He's a big dude. He's like 6'4", 6'5", 260. So I'm kind of excited where the Steelers will put him. I do think Jack Sawyer is going to see some field action this year. It really just depends where the Steelers view him position-wise, whether they do see him as a defensive end, defensive lineman, or an outside linebacker. He is kind of a hybrid type of player, so they can kind of move him around and see what he did, what he can do. But, in 2023, unfortunately, Chuck Clark did tear his ACL, ending the season before it started. The following year, he did sign with the Jets. He played 12 games. All were starts. He recorded 69 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and 2 pass deflections. But as a member of the Ravens, this guy did record 384 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, 32 pass deflections, and 5 interceptions. I think he also had 1 or 2 defensive touchdowns to go along with that. So, this guy is a productive player. He was a starter in Baltimore and in New York, so he knows what it's like to play football at a high level. Obviously in Baltimore, they do play at a high level most of the time. They usually do have winning seasons with their quarterback and that defense. But obviously the New York Jets is a team that's still got a lot of work. But, he is 30 years old, but he will join the Steelers in training camp, where he will join former teammate, former Raven Deshaun Elliott, who we did lock down this offseason on a 2 or 3 year deal. And like I said, Juan Thornhill, a former member of the Cleveland Browns. So we are adding a ton of AFC North players to our roster, which I do like to see. You know, these guys do know what it's like to play in the AFC North. They do know the physical football that we do like to play in the AFC North. They know what's at stake. You know, this is always a tough division to play in. It's always very competitive. And, you know, critics always like to count the Pittsburgh Steelers out every single year, always rank us at the bottom of the division. But somehow, some way, we always end up being contenders and either do win the division or come second or third. So I do think this is a pretty good pickup for our defense. You know, another guy that we have picked up this offseason is Jaylen Ramsey. Jaylen Ramsey is a guy that was ranked the #1 safety by the Pittsburgh Steelers at that safety and cornerback position when he did come out of the draft in 2017, I believe. So, you know, I could see him also playing that safety role. It really just depends where the Pittsburgh Steelers want to put him on the field when he is playing. He will be a starter. He will be on the field 99% of the time. It really just comes down to where the Pittsburgh Steelers view him talent-wise and where they view him scheme-wise, where they do want to play him. Because we also have three other very talented cornerbacks in Joey Porter Jr., obviously. Darius Slay, another guy we added this offseason, a Super Bowl champion. And, you know, a guy that many tend to forget about as he did get kind of benched last season, Beanie Bishop, a guy that I really think could take another big step this season if he does see the field. You know, it really just comes down to whether the Pittsburgh Steelers do want to play him. Unfortunately, last year he did kind of get phased out of the lineup because we did have Cameron Sutton, who did come back from suspension, and he kind of took over in his position at that cornerback nickel position. But he's gone. And I think Beanie Bishop's going to be that next man up, as we do have, you know, not too many big names behind guys like Jaylen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and JPJ. I think the only real notable guy we do have behind them is a guy in James Pierre, who has been a guy that has been a Pittsburgh Steeler most of his career. He has made plays here and there, but he's more of a special teams guy. Not really a guy that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers want to be on the field when we do play defense. But, you know, another guy like I was talking about earlier that Chuck Clark will be able to learn from, will be able to connect with, is Deshaun Elliott, the physical, strong safety we did add last year, who was very successful in his first year in Pittsburgh. We did obviously sign him to that long-term contract. I do think he's going to play even better next year with 1 year down in the defense. So, you know, Chuck Clark will have some former Ravens to talk to, who he can also learn from. We also have a guy in Patrick Queen, who I do think is also going to take a next step. You know, last year he did have a pretty good season, did make a Pro Bowl, but, you know, he has made it known this offseason that he does want to play even better this offseason as we go into next season, and I do think he will. Our middle linebackers are strong, our safeties are now strong, and our cornerbacks are strong. I think we're looking very good on the defensive side of the football. I think this acquisition of Chuck Clark was necessary and needed for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Unfortunately, that is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys aren't already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers.